This video covers Math 109, Technology Week 1, Sign Numbers, Addition and Subtraction. If you don't know what positive and negative numbers are, well, positive numbers are numbers that are greater than 0. Negative numbers are numbers that are smaller than 0. And we'll treat this a little differently when we do adding, subtracting. When you add numbers of the same sign, whether the numbers be both positive or both negative, you're going to keep the sign and you're going to add the values. Now, what I mean by values, when you look at this number, it's negative 12. The quantity of the number is 12. So if we start out, we are adding two negative numbers together. So we're going to get a negative result. We add the quantities, 12 and 3 would combine to make a 15. So the answer is negative 15. In the second one, we are adding two positive numbers. So when I add two positive numbers, the answer will be positive. And when I combine the quantities 9 and 5, I get 14. Now, of course, that's just going to be written as regular 14. Kind of think about it this way. If you had money, if you owe $12 to one person and owe $3 to another person, you would owe a total of negative $15. Likewise, if you if you make $9 from one job and you make $5 from another job, you would then have $14. Now, the same rules apply for fractions and decimals. You just have to follow the rules for those particular types of numbers. Here I am combining two negative fractions, so the answer is going to be negative. If I combine the quantities 4/15 and 1/15, I'm going to get 5/15. Now, 5/15 reduces, both of these are divisible by 5, it will reduce to negative 1/3. Now, negative fractions can be either written with a negative out front, or you can write them with a negative in the numerator written like this. You never want to put two minus signs. It's either written out front or up at the top. Probably this would be the preferred way because then you can keep track of your minus signs. And then finally, decimals. Well, I am combining two negative numbers. Both are negative, so my answer is going to be negative. If I combine the quantities 8.3 and 5.7, I'm going to get a 14.0. Well, that's going to be just written as negative 14 because all the decimal portions are 0. Now, what happens if you have different signs? Well, if you have different signs, you're going to find the difference between the two quantities and use the sign of the larger quantity. For example, in this one, I have a negative number added to a positive number. So I need to find the difference between 21 and 12, which would be 9. The larger quantity is 21. It's negative, so my answer would be negative. In the second example, I'm adding a positive number to a negative number. They're different in signs. I'm going to find the difference, which would be a 13. I'm going to use the sign of the larger, which the larger one is positive, so the answer is positive 13. Finally, in this one, when I add 0 to any amount, it's not going to change it. So this would still result in having a negative 12. Again, if you think about money, this would mean that you owe $21 and you pay down 12, so you now owe $9. This one means you have $22, but you spend $9, so you would now have 13. And here, if you have nothing and you owe $12, well, you still owe $12. Now, a nice little concept to remember is if you have the same quantity, both positive and negative, it's going to combine to make a 0. Here, a is representing any number. For example, if I have negative 25 plus 25, that's going to give me a 0. If I have a positive 72 and a negative 72, that's also going to give me a 0. It doesn't matter if the first number listed is negative and the second number listed is positive, or the first number listed is positive and the second number is listed as negative. Now let's work some examples where there's more than two numbers. To do these, you're going to start from left to right and do two numbers at a time and then combine with the third or fourth number. Here, I'm combining a positive number with a negative number, so I'm going to find the difference, which would be a 2. The larger quantity is 7, so it's going to be a negative 2, and I'll bring down what's left. I still have a negative number and a positive number, so I'm going to find the difference, which would be 1. The larger quantity is positive, so it results in a positive 1. In this one, I'll start out 5 plus a negative 3 was a positive number times a negative, positive number plus a negative number, so I'm going to find the difference, which is a 2. The larger quantity is positive, so I'm going to keep it positive. I'll copy down what's left. Work the next one. I have a positive number plus a positive number, so the answer is going to be positive. copy down what's left, and now I have a situation where I have a positive and a negative quantity of the same number, so the result would be 0. Now, in this little word problem, it asked me to find the temperature. The temperature at 4 p.m. on February 2nd was negative 10 degrees Celsius. By 11 p.m., it had risen 12 degrees. Well, risen would mean this would be a positive 12. So they want me to combine a positive 10 or a negative 10 and a positive 12. If you combine those, it's a negative times a positive. So you have to find the difference between those numbers, which is a positive 2. And it stays positive because the larger quantity is positive. So the temperature at 11 p.m. would be positive 2 degrees Celsius or just 2 degrees Celsius. Now, subtraction are just going to be rewritten as addition problems. I know that sounds a little strange, but anything that has a subtraction would be something that has this little symbol in between the numbers. It can be rewritten as an addition of a negative number. So if we look at this example, 6 minus 10 really can be rewritten as 6 plus a negative 10, and then you can just follow the rules we had in addition. I have a positive number and a negative number, so I'm going to find the difference, which is 4. The larger quantity is negative, so it results in a negative 4. In the second example, I can rewrite this as negative 14 plus a negative 19. I'm combining two negative numbers together. They're the same sign, so the answer is going to be negative. Combine 14 and 19, I get a 33. Now, in this last example, notice you have two minus signs together, and that goes back up to this little statement right here. If you have two negative signs together side by side, well, that really means the opposite of negative, and the opposite of negative means positive. So when I see this, both of these are going to be replaced with a single positive sign. So this would be rewritten as negative 12 plus 6. And again, you have a negative number added to a positive number, so we're going to find the difference between those two, which is 6. The larger quantity is 12, so it would be a negative 6. Again, whenever you have more than two numbers, you work your way from left to right. So starting with this one, I look at this translates to 12 plus a negative 5. Positive number and a negative number, so I find the difference, which is 7. It's a positive because the larger quantity is positive. I'm going to copy down what's remaining, which is negative 7. Think of this as being 7 plus a negative 7, so this is going to result in a 0. When I look at this one, I'll start out with the first two. This makes 9 plus a negative 6. Well, 9 plus a negative 6, they're opposite in sign, so we're going to find the difference, which is 3. It would be a positive 3. I'm going to just copy down what's left. Well, I notice that right here I have a double negative, so both of these are going to be replaced with a single positive sign. So this would become 3 plus 3 plus 8. So I can do 3 plus 3, which is 6, and then 6 plus 6 would result in a 14. And then finally, this word problem. The highest point in Asia is the top of Mount Everest at a height of 29,028 feet above sea level. Since it's above sea level, that's going to be represented with a positive 29028. This means above sea level. The lowest point of the Dead Sea, which is 1,320 feet below sea level, so this would be represented as a negative 1312 because this is below sea level. How much higher is Mount Everest than the Dead Sea? Well, they're asking you how much higher to find the difference. If you're finding the difference, then you are subtracting. You subtract the first value from the second value. So you're going to end up having a problem like this. 29028, subtract a negative 1312 to get your answer. Well, notice you have two negative signs, which make a positive. So this ends up being 29028 plus 1312 to get your answer. And we want to add those, and we would get 30,340 feet. So how much higher? It's 30,340 feet higher at the top of the mountain than it is at the lowest point on the Dead Sea.